Look, honey, this much cash doesn't belong in a drawer like this.
I'm just doing my job, sir. Please move back.
Don't give me that attitude. We know how this works.
My shift. You can't just touch my equipment.
Step away now, or I'm detaining you for obstruction.
Call your supervisor. I'm not touching anything else.
Friday night, 22/17. Rain. The overhead camera catches the corner pharmacy in that washed-out fluorescent white that makes everything look too clean. A rain-speckled gust rattles the front glass, and the ceiling lights answer with a low hum. In the top left of the footage, the burned-in OSD reads January 30, 2026-22-17 bright. Two men in tactical vests with FED stamped in block yellow step through the front aisle and never slow down. The taller one, Julian Whitaker, cuts straight to the counter and plants both forearms on the speckled laminate like he owns the line. The second man hangs half a step behind square shoulders, hand hovering near his belt, eyes doing the watch, the hands scan that regular customers never do. Diamond Campbell is mid-shift blue polo tucked in name badge, pinned the cash drawer open behind her for a count. A single bill lies flat on the counter near a cardboard tray. Whitaker leans in close enough that his breath would carry if the mic weren't already clipping under the fridge case drone. He tilts his head chin high and says, "Look, honey, this much cash doesn't belong in a drawer like this." Diamond's fingers tighten around the black handheld scanner at her hip. The muscles in her jaw jump once, then lock, like her body is trying to keep her voice from cracking. She takes a careful half-step back without turning away and answers, "I'm just doing my job, sir. Please move back." Whitaker doesn't move back. He stays folded over the counter, eyes sliding from her badge to her face, and he lets a thin smile curl like a warning. "Don't give me that attitude, we know how this works." Diamond's throat goes dry. The store policy is blunt, the register and the controlled counter area can't be left unsecured, and the till can't be abandoned mid-count without a manager override. Behind her, the narrow swing gate is latched. On the other side of it is the open drawer and a stack of deposit envelopes that must be logged before close. Leaving would mean violating policy, risking a write-up, and worse, letting a stranger's hands reach what the camera can't see under the counter lip. Whitaker's right hand lifts fingers stabbing the air, once then his arm slides forward across the counter. His reach tracks toward the cash and the tray, a deliberate invasion of her workspace. Diamond's pulse thumps in her ears loud as the humming lights, and she brings her free hand up, palm open, fingers splayed where the camera can read them. "It's my shift, you can't just touch my equipment." Whitaker's mouth hardens. The second agent shifts boots, squeaking faintly on tile, and the aisle behind them narrows into a wall of bodies and vests, an exit that doesn't feel like an exit. Whitaker straightens just enough to make the threat sound official, then pushes the words out cold. "Step away now, or I'm detaining you for obstruction." A cold sweat breaks under Diamond's collar. Her hand trembles once a quick, involuntary shake, and she hides it by bracing her fingertips on the counter edge. The scanner digs into her palm. She keeps her eyes level anyway, controlled breath in clipped pulls, and says, "Call your supervisor, I'm not touching anything else." For a beat, the only sound is the fluorescent buzz and the rain-tapping glass. Whitaker's forearm shoots forward again. The overhead footage shows his hand clamp onto Diamond's wrist and tug her toward the swing gate. Her body jerks sideways, shoulder twisting, and her badge flashes as she tries to pull free without swinging a fist, without giving him the resisting picture he's trying to paint. The counter camera's audio catches a scrape of fabric and a sharp breath. It also catches Whitaker's voice, shifting to performance louder, angled toward whatever mic he thinks is live. "Stop pulling away," he snaps, as if his grip is a safety measure instead of the problem. The second agent turns his head toward the aisle, watching for witnesses, while his hand stays near his belt, like a silent punctuation mark. Diamond's stomach knots hard. She forces her hands back into view, palms open again, and the camera records the small, disciplined choice, visible hands, no sudden movement, no excuse. "I'm not pulling," she says, voice tight. "You're grabbing me," Whitaker answers by tightening his fingers. The camera stutters an older unit, dropping a single jagged frame as the lighting flickers just long enough to make the moment look like a skip. It's small, but later it matters. Friday night, 22/18. Rain. Diamond's eyes flick to the wall clock and the blinking register display. She can't step away. The gate is behind her and the men are between the counter and the front aisle. She can't just walk out. The drawer's open, the till count is in progress, and the store's policy treats that like an active liability. She can't call 911 without being accused of interference while his hand is already on her. So she does the next legal thing the training binder suggests. With her left hand still visible, she nudges the counterphone with her knuckle, Slow, deliberate, no sudden reach, and hits the store's internal manager extension. No answer. She hits it again. Still nothing. Whitaker's head dips closer, and his voice drops into something meant to sound like private correction, like she's a child in trouble. Do you even understand what a federal stop is, he says. Say it again slowly what you think your rights are. Diamond's face burns hot. She swallows against the dryness, and keeps her tone even because the camera is listening even when her body feels like it's shaking apart. I'm asking for identification and a supervisor, she says. That's all. Whitaker's shoulder rolls irritated. He tries a different lever. You people always want to argue at the counter, he mutters, the kind of line that can be denied later because it's vague on purpose. The second agent doesn't correct him. He simply watches Diamond's hands. Friday night, 22:19 rain. A customer in aisle 4 pauses, phone lifting. The overhead view catches a small rectangle of screen glowing angled toward the counter. That phone becomes the second independent source before anyone in the room understands how valuable it will be. Diamond notices it too. She doesn't look straight at the customer, no pleading, no signal that could be labeled inciting. But she raises her voice half a notch so the aisle can hear. Sir, she says to Whitaker, if you're federal, show credentials. If you won't, I need my store owner here. Whitaker's eyes flick once toward the aisle, then back. He makes a show of looking over her shoulder at the open drawer, like the money is the real threat. This is a corridor sweep, he says louder, now turning the phrase into a shield. We're checking irregular cash handling. The words corridor sweep are vague enough to sound official, and empty enough to be unverifiable in the moment. It's a cover story, designed to survive on intimidation. Friday night, 22:20 rain. Diamond's manager still hasn't answered. The register beeps a low battery warning from the handheld scanner. 2 quick chirps that slice into the room's hum. The noise is small, but it spikes Diamond's pulse because it sounds like the beginning of a failure, a device dying in her hand when she needs every tool to function. Whitaker hears it and smiles like the store itself is betraying her. Put it down, he says, nodding at the scanner. Hands empty. Step back. Diamond's fingers go numb around the plastic. She sets the scanner on the counter slowly, then lifts her hands again. My hands are up, she says. I'm asking you to identify yourself. Whitaker's right hand moves toward his belt. Not a full draw, just enough to remind her what he can escalate to. The second agent mirrors the posture-weight shifting stance widening. 2 bodies, 1 narrow space. The gate behind Diamond is still latched. The drawer is still open. The store is still her responsibility. Friday night, 22:21 rain. Diamond makes the next procedural move. She asks a question the camera can keep forever. Am I free to leave? She says, clear and audible. Whitaker doesn't answer the question. He answers around it. If you keep obstructing, you're not going anywhere, he says. And he angles his shoulder as if talking into a mic, even though the overhead camera can't see one. Subject refusing lawful commands, he adds loud enough to build his narrative on the fly. The customer phone in aisle 4 dips, then rises again, still recording. Friday night, 22:22 rain. Diamond's eyes flick to the laminated placard taped inside the counter, emergency contacts owner number alarm protocol. Her hand hovers, then she stops herself, no sudden reach. I need to call the owner, she says. Whitaker crowds closer chest, nearly over the counter line. You don't call anybody, he says. You answer questions. Diamond's breath goes shallow. Her stomach knots again harder this time, and she fights the urge to step back because there is nowhere to step. The camera catches her shoulders stiffen, the small tremor in her forearm as she keeps her hands visible. Friday night, 22:23 rain. The second agent finally speaks, voice low and uncertain. Julian, just get the ID. Whitaker ignores him. His hand comes up with cuffs not yet on but visible heavy, a threat made of steel. The click of one bracelet against the other is sharp in the audio track, even over the fridge drone. Diamond's lips part, then press together. She forces out words like they're coming through sand. Call your supervisor, she repeats, but she doesn't repeat the whole argument. She doesn't give him looping dialogue. The point is, on tape, the point is enough. Friday night, 22:24 rain. Whitaker lunges his hand forward again and yanks Diamond's wrist toward the gate. This time, the counter camera's view is partly blocked by his vest and shoulder. The overhead camera stutters again, half a second of jitter that makes the grip look like a blur. It's the near loss, the critical moment threatened by technical failure. The customer's phone becomes the recovery. From aisle 4, the shaky handheld video catches what the overhead misses the exact angle of Whitaker's fingers on Diamond's wrist and the way her body twists away, trying not to fall into the gate. Diamond's breath turns into a hard-clipped gasp. "Stop," she says. "Don't touch me." Whitaker answers by narrating. "She's pulling away," he says loudly, building the resisting frame in real time. Then aimed toward his shoulder, he adds the line that later becomes a trap, non-compliant. Possible interference. Friday night, 22:25 rain. A new sound cuts through the room, the store's front bell again. Someone else enters another customer, then freezes reading the posture at the counter like a danger sign. Diamond keeps her hands open. She keeps her feet planted. She keeps her voice controlled, even as her body shakes under it. "I'm requesting verification," she says. "I'm not consenting to any search of my workspace." Whitaker's eyes flash. He leans in and hisses, "You think you're a lawyer." The words are meant to shame, to shrink her in public. Diamond swallows throat burning. "I'm an employee," she says. "I'm responsible for this register." Friday night, 22:27 rain. Whitaker's second hand moves over the counter lip, fingertips hovering above the open drawer, as if the cash belongs to him for inspection. Diamond's face burns again, this time with rage held back so hard it makes her vision pulse. Her jaw tightens until it aches. She asks again because procedure likes repetition when it's recorded. "Show credentials," she says. "Badge, name." Whitaker smirks. "You don't get to demand," he says, and then softer a dog whistle meant to land without being obvious. "People with real jobs don't talk like that." Friday night, 22:28 rain. The second agent's gaze shifts toward the front windows. Rainwater streaks down the glass, and outside, headlights smear in the wet. Somewhere out there is the owner's apartment and the owner's phone. Somewhere out there is a dispatch desk that can confirm whether Fed means anything tonight. Diamond's mouth is dry enough to hurt. She forces a swallow and says loud enough for aisle 4, "I need a supervisor. I need a case number. If you're real, you can give me those." Whitaker's irritation becomes visible. Nostrils flare, jaw flex. He hates the words case number because they force paperwork, and paperwork creates accountability. Friday night, 22:29 rain. Diamond finally uses the emergency list. Without reaching for anything sudden, she turns her head slightly and calls out to the customer near the entrance. Someone not behind the counter, someone Whitaker doesn't control. "Ma'am," she says, voice steady but strained. "Could you call the store owner? Tell him there are men claiming federal authority at the register." Whitaker snaps, "Don't involve customers," as if that's a law. It isn't. It's just a power play. The customer hesitates, then pulls her phone up and starts dialing anyway. Friday night, 22:30 rain. Ethan Ramirez, the store owner, arrives fast, not teleported, but urgent. The exterior camera later shows his car pulling into the lot, wipers whipping hazard lights blinking once as he parks crooked. He enters with a tablet in his hand, not a weapon. His posture is tight with liability, not heroism. Whitaker pivots toward him like an animal guarding a claim. His hand hovers near his holster again. "Back up," he barks. "Federal investigation." Ramirez doesn't back up. He stops just inside the camera's view, making sure the overhead can see his open hands and the tablet screen. Before anyone moves, he says, "Voice calm, name, and badge." Whitaker doesn't provide it. He provides theater. "Corridor sweep," he repeats louder. Ramirez answers with procedure. He taps the screen and brings up a 4-panel grid overhead counter aisle front door. The store's newer DVR is separate from the old overhead unit, and it records to an encrypted cloud with an automatic export receipt. "This is a monitored pharmacy counter," Ramirez says. "Everything here is preserved." Whitaker's eyes flick to the ceiling camera and then to the DVR cabinet by the wall. For the first time, his posture sags a millimeter. It's not surrender. It's recalculation. Friday night, 22:31 rain. Ramirez does not claim access to any secret database. He does the legal thing, he calls. On speaker, he dials the non-emergency line for the local precinct and asks dispatch to confirm whether any federal task force operation is coordinated with their district tonight. The phone's speaker crackles, distorted by the fridge case drone. The first dispatcher's words are partially swallowed by static micro-consequence number 1. It's enough to create doubt. So Ramirez asks for a repeat and a callback number. He asks for a CAD entry. He asks for the watch commander's name. Every request is an anchor. "Stay on the line," dispatch says, and the hold tone fills the store like a metronome. Whitaker hates the hold tone because it's time passing on record. Diamond stands with her hands visible, wrist red where his fingers were. Her pulse still hammers, but now it has something to hammer against a witness with authority who cares about liability. Friday night, 22:33 rain. While dispatch checks, Ramirez does a second legal confirmation. He asks Whitaker for credentials again, not with anger, but with simple insistence. If you're federal, show ID, he says. If you're not, leave the premises. Whitaker tries to flip it. Your employee is obstructing, he says, gesturing at Diamond like she's contraband. She's refusing a status check. Ramirez doesn't take the bait. He points to the cameras. You touched her, he says. That's on video. Whitaker's eyes narrow. She's resisting, he says again, like repetition makes it true. Friday night, 22:35, rain. Dispatch comes back on the line. The speaker crackles again, but this time Ramirez repeats the confirmation, slowly forcing clarity into the noise. No coordinated operation, dispatch says. No request for assistance. No CAD entry for that address tonight. That's the second independent source to the cover story. Not a secret log, not a hack, just a dispatcher's statement and a missing CAD record. Whitaker's mouth opens, then closes. The fluorescent hum seems louder. The room's silence turns thick, and the only movement is the rain sliding down the glass. This is the freeze moment, the trap tightening while everyone waits for Whitaker to choose a story he can survive. Friday night, 22:36. Rain. Ramirez makes the trap explicit. He speaks a sentence that becomes a procedural wall. You are being recorded, he says. If you claim lawful authority, state your name and badge number clearly for the cameras. Whitaker's throat works once. His eyes flick toward the customer in aisle 4 still filming. He tries one last bluff. Paper warrant, he says. In the vehicle. Ramirez doesn't chase him outside. He doesn't let Whitaker control the scene. Bring it in, he says, or leave. Diamond's voice comes out small but steady. Am I free to leave? She asks again because the question is a key. Whitaker doesn't answer. He steps back finally, and the distance between his vest and Diamond's counterline becomes visible on camera. Friday night, 22:38 rain. The second agent shifts his weight and looks at Whitaker like a man watching a bad decision sink a boat. Julian, he murmurs, we should go. Whitaker glares at him. The glare doesn't matter. The cameras do. Ramirez points to the swing gate behind Diamond. Open it. He tells Diamond, gentle now. Step out slowly. Diamond unlatches it and steps into the aisle with controlled movements, hands still visible. Her knees feel weak, but she doesn't collapse. She won't give Whitaker a new narrative. Whitaker steps toward her, once like he might grab again, then stops. The trap has teeth, now dispatch on record. Multiple cameras, a witness phone. Friday night, 22:40 rain. Whitaker and his partner exit. The front bell chimes as they leave, and rain air pours in for a second cold, wet reel. The door closes. The sound of their boots disappears into the wet parking lot. Diamond stands in the open aisle and finally lets herself exhale. It comes out shaky. Her hands tremble and she presses them together at her waist to hide it. Ramirez doesn't tell her to calm down. He does the practical thing. He secures evidence and protects the employee because liability is real. Friday night, 22:42 rain. Ramirez walks to the DVR cabinet and starts an export. The screen shows a progress bar crawling painfully slow because the store's upload speed is throttled at night. Another near loss forms the videos are on a rolling overwrite schedule, and the older overhead unit only keeps a limited buffer. If the export fails, the cleanest angle could disappear into routine deletion. Ramirez calls the DVR vendor's support line, not for a backdoor, not for a hack, but for instructions on creating a local copy immediately. He puts the call on speaker so the advice is recorded by the counter mic. Chain of custody begins in real time. The support tech tells him to plug in a blank drive and initiate an on-device export. Ramirez holds up the sealed drive to the camera before opening it, showing the packaging and serial sticker. Diamond watches stomach still knotted and realizes procedure can be armor when it's done right. Friday night, 22:47 rain. The first export attempt fails at 63%. An error tone pings and the progress bar resets to 0. That's micro-consequence number 2, delay risk, the gut drop of watching proof slip away. Ramirez doesn't swear. He doesn't panic. He switches to a second drive, photographs the error code on screen, and restarts the export with a smaller time window, 15 to 22:45, so the file size is manageable. He writes the time window on a piece of receipt paper and holds it up to the camera before taping it to the drive. Diamond's hands shake again as she folds the receipt paper. She hides the shake by smoothing the tape down hard, pressing until her fingertips go numb. Friday night, 22:53 rain. The export completes. The DVR prints an automatic export receipt with a file name time range and an integrity checksum. Ramirez places the receipt on the counter under the camera and reads the checksum out loud so the audio track captures it too. Then he seals the drive in an evidence bag used for pharmacy audits, tamper, strip date field signature lines. No magic, just documentation. The customer from aisle 4 comes forward and offers the phone video. Ramirez asks for consent, gets it on camera, and has the customer text the file to a dedicated business email. The email's automatic timestamp becomes another independent marker. Friday night, 23:05 rain. Ramirez calls an attorney not for theatrics, but because the evidence needs a legal handler fast. On speaker, the attorney instructs him to store the drive in a safe, to keep the original DVR untouched, and to send a written incident summary while memories are fresh. The attorney also advises Diamond to get a medical check for wrist pain and to document any bruising without exaggeration. Diamond nods throat tight and finally lets herself say what her body has been screaming since 22:17. "He hurt me," she says quietly, then bites down on the words like they might spill into tears. Friday night, 23:18. Rain. After the store is secured and the drawer is closed, count finished, deposit logged policy, satisfied Diamond sits in the break room with her sleeve rolled up. A red mark rings her wrist. Her hands still tremble, and now she doesn't hide it. The adrenaline is draining and leaving soreness behind. Ramirez drafts a written statement with times and facts, not feelings, arrival threats, physical contact, refusal to provide credentials dispatch confirmation exit. He emails it to the attorney and to the store's insurance contact. The email thread becomes part of the chain of custody. The night ends without sirens, but it doesn't end without consequences. Months later, the accountability arrives the way real accountability usually does, slow documented and irreversible. During discovery, the civil attorneys subpoena dispatch records for the non-emergency call and obtain the CAD confirmation that no coordinated operation existed for that address at that time. The store's export receipt and checksum become the foundation for authenticity. The customer's phone video fills the overhead camera's stutter gap, showing the grip clearly where the older unit jitters. Whitaker's defense tries to argue reasonable suspicion and mistake, but the evidence won't cooperate. The cameras record him calling Diamond honey while leaning across her counter. They record the threat of detention for obstruction without presenting credentials. They record him narrating non-compliant while he is the one initiating physical contact. A pattern surfaces not through rumor, but through documents' internal activity logs, showing Whitaker conducting status checks without corresponding dispatch coordination and complaint records that were closed as insufficient evidence before anyone had multi-angle video. This time, there is evidence. The case does not end with a cinematic gavel slam. It ends with a verdict after days of testimony, video played frame by frame, dispatch calls, played through speakers, and export receipts blown up on screens like they are fingerprints. Diamond Campbell is awarded $5.2 million in damages for civil rights violations, emotional distress, and battery. The number isn't a lottery. It is built from lost wages, documented medical visits, attorney fees, and the punitive weight of authority abused on camera. The money changes Diamond's options, but the deeper transfer of power happens in public. Whitaker is terminated and decertified. His credentials are revoked by the board after an administrative hearing where the same footage plays again, and his own non-compliant narration is used against him. He walks out past news cameras months later in a cheap suit, jaw clenched, no vest, no patch, just a man who can't hide behind letters anymore. The settlement includes monitoring terms, independent oversight of task force-style sweeps, mandatory body camera policy alignment for any partnered operation, and a written reform requiring verifiable credentials presentation on first contact during any retail stop. The store installs a direct supervisor verification line at the register and posts a rights awareness placard where the camera can see it. Diamond returns to school with her tuition covered and her schedule finally under her own control. She doesn't become fearless. She becomes practiced. She volunteers with a community legal clinic teaching workers how to ask the same key questions. She asked name badge, supervisor, case number, and, most importantly, am I free to leave? Because that question recorded cleanly is a hinge. It turns intimidation into a decision point. Justice isn't loud, it's documented. This story highlights how quickly claimed authority can become a weapon when it isn't challenged with procedure. In any high-pressure encounter with law enforcement or someone claiming official power, focus on calm, visible hands and simple questions that create a record identification supervisor and the legal basis for the stop. Preserve evidence through lawful means, exports receipts, timestamps, and witness files, and keep a clear chain of custody so the facts can survive later scrutiny. Some elements are selectively fictionalized for education.